Why are some conservative influencers suddenly okay with the Constitution falling apart? Why are so many young men starting to believe that our system should give way to something else, something like a king? In a recent interview with the Hoover Institution's Peter Robinson, my former Senator Ben Sasse laid out exactly what is wrong with the modern American far right.
And it used to just be the left, the far left, that had a bunch of people who were post constitutional or post liberal, as in post classically liberal. Now we have a bunch of people at the right end of the spectrum that are also post constitutional or post liberal. I don't think.
There's one so called conservative in particular who comes to mind here because he's captured the political imagination of a lot of young men. I made several videos about this guy, not about his insults or his shock value, but about his actual politics. Because his politics are, in Sass's terms, post constitutional. This guy's become a figurehead for this post constitutional right, and he's not the only one on that train. As the interview went on, Sass started naming deeper problems in American politics. He never used the phrase post constitutional right again, but what he described goes a long way toward explaining why that faction exists on the right at all. And it starts with maybe the biggest problem in our current system: lawmakers who willingly hand away the powers that the Constitution gives them.
I'm going to quote you from your appearance last year with Andrew Roberts on his podcast. When I was running for office in 2013 and 2014, having never run for anything before in my life, I would talk constantly about executive or judicial overreach. And those are big problems, no doubt. But the much bigger problem is legislative underreach.
Yeah, so I stand by all that. Of what happens in Washington, D.C., let's divide power three ways. We'll have a Article 1, legislature, Article 2, executive branch, Article 3, judiciary. They're kind of co-equal branches, but the legislature is the preeminent branch. So let's divide them as well. Let's divide the legislature between the House and the Senate. They did that because they assumed the people who would serve there would want to do stuff. They thought the three branches would be jealous for their prerogatives and they'd be ambitious for power. And so you do a ton of stuff. And so you need to constrain government.
Ben hits the nail on the head here. Since the New Deal era, Congress has steadily handed off its core lawmaking power to the executive branch and the courts. The court's recent decision overturning Chevron deference forces agencies to be a little bit more careful when enacting laws, but Congress itself can still largely avoid legislating the hard questions. Because of that abdication, most people notice Congress only when it's blocking the president, not when it's doing its real job of writing laws. This younger, post-constitutional right-wingers grew up in this system. They came of age under a president-turned-celebrity in Obama, and then a celebrity-turned-president in Trump. They've absorbed this idea that if the president really wants something, he should just be able to snap his fingers and poof, it gets done. When Congress does occasionally dig in, flex its muscles, and slows down the president, these young men don't see it as the founder's design at work. Instead, all they see is Congress just sabotaging the president. Checks and balances feels like the enemy, so naturally they blame the system and call for a king-like executive. Historically, conservatives have always been for both limited government and conservative social policy. These young men still share the social conservatism, so they sound like us on the cultural fights. But in terms of power, they're asking for something completely different: a massive expansion of executive authority, as long as the man on the throne is their man. That brings up a key question that we'll answer in a second, but first, please subscribe if you want more slow, evidence-based, honest breakdowns like this, and keep listening because that key question is this: why did the abdication of congressional power take place? Part of the problem is structural, part of it is moral. Structurally, the political parties themselves reward the people who want to be famous, not the people who want to honestly legislate. Just watch this clip of Ben Sasse from the interview.
I was always willing to say what I believe to voters, even if it might make me unpopular. I have the weird claim to fame of being by far the highest vote getter in the history of Nebraska, and also by far the most sanctioned person in the history of Nebraska. My guess is second or third most sanctioned person in Nebraska has been sanctioned by their party 3 or 4 or 5 times. 63 times state parties in Nebraska convened to condemn me for not being aligned with President Trump on issue X or whatever.
As Ben said later in that response, most Americans are center-right. Most Americans want some order, lots of freedoms, and a sense of normalcy. And arguably more than any politician in my lifetime, Ben Sasse was that voice in the Senate. But the party machines on both sides don't reward people like him. The parties keep dragging the debate toward the loudest, angriest voices on the edges. The incentive isn't who can write a good law, but who can dominate the news cycle, go viral on TikTok, say the wildest thing, and survive. That's why Sasse, who did legislate well from a principled conservative perspective, was censured 63 times by the Nebraska Republican Party, because he actually wanted to work on writing a good law, working with everyone, and was willing to stand up for what the majority of Americans wanted. But the systems elevate the TikTokers. It elevates the most selfish people to Congress. The people who are happy to say anything, contradict themselves, and burn down whatever bridges they built if it builds their personal brand. Because of the party leadership, our only choices in Congress are people who would rather be influencers online than influential in a committee hearing. Unless, of course, they can go viral from that committee hearing. But even when they're doing good work in Congress, as Ben said, even your best intentions are tinged with just a little bit of selfishness.
And I never did anything that's righteous enough. I never did anything that wasn't tainted by selfishness. I love my wife more than anything. And yet, at times when I ask a question of her, both to have her feel heard and loved and respected, but also because I kind of hope she'll flip that question back to me and I'm ready to talk again. Enough about you, more about me. Like everything we do is still selfish, it's tainted. And so it isn't just being forgiven, it's knowing that I need the imputed righteousness of Christ.
To be honest, I really only showed you that because that sort of humility that Ben is showing is astonishing. But also because in Congress, a different kind of selfishness, not Sasse's humility kind, but a full, complete, look at me type of selfishness is on full display. It's full of people who either want to be on TikTok or in the Oval Office, so they willingly let the Oval take all the power, hoping that one day that can be them. And that's where the structural problem meets the moral problem. The structure of the parties themselves rewards selfish wannabe influencers who lack a real work ethic. That lack of a work ethic is something that Ben Sasse wrote extensively about in The Vanishing American Adult, and he talked about it in the interview.
That's an easily falsifiable proposition that having access to more stuff will lead to better outcomes. The problem is humans don't have the right habits. We're broken.
The problem is not that we don't have enough stuff, it's that we don't have good habits. My generation, and the ones younger than mine, no longer have a strong work ethic. And I'm even including myself with that group. I know that I'm consistently late, always have been, and in my career I found that I struggle to always find meaning in the work that I'm doing. Full confession there. But it's not just me, it's an entire generation of people. And as my generation grows older, it's increasingly becoming members of Congress. We've built a culture where the young people in the halls of power, and even some of the older members, want the status and power without the labor of responsibility. Instead of doing the slow, tedious work of actually legislating, they just hand off the hard questions to federal agencies, the courts, or they just wait for the next president. They save all of their energy for grandstanding in hearings, playing for 30-second clips that play well on social media. That's how you get clips like Eric Swalwell asking Ben Shapiro about whether he believes that homosexuality is a sin. As you watch this, try to guess what this hearing was about.
And just because we found some receipts, you did say, I think homosexual activity is a sin.
Yes, I'm a religious Jew. That's
Sure,
true.
there's a genetic component.
You found me out.
Orientation. But the view of all religious people I know has always been that sexual behavior is something that is up to you. And you said, I may have a desire to sleep with many women, but I do not.
I agree with me. Yes, that's true.
Congratulations on your, I'm sure it's very hard to restrain yourself.
That hearing was about anti-competitive advertising practices. To this day, I wish that Ben Shapiro had said something about Swalwell's alleged relationship with Chinese spy Fang Fang. That was a missed opportunity. But the point is that Swalwell clearly was not there to have a serious hearing on advertising conglomerates. He was there to go viral. Shapiro is maybe the most famous conservative pundit in the country, and Swalwell clearly hoped that his questions about gay marriage would go viral. All he really established, though, is that yes, Ben Shapiro is a religious Jew. But young men on the right see this stuff from both sides of the aisle, and of course they start to despise Congress. Of course they think that the entire institution is a joke. All they see are people who sit back, try to go viral, and then only step in to stop things from happening. And even then, that looks performative. So what we have is just a giant loop that we've been on for years. The parties push for the most radical clout chasers. Those clout chasers refuse to govern. Congress doesn't do anything. The conservative influencers get even more radicalized by Congress's failure. And then the party just pushes for the next biggest radical. We've been on that loop for so long that the radicals on the right are now arguing for a post-constitutional world, just as Ben Sasse said. Our problem is that our system was not designed for clout chasers.
About it. You got to elect different kind of people who are super skeptical of politics, not people who spent their whole life trying to get to Washington, but people who view it kind of Cincinnati style or George Washington style as I got to serve for a term, but man, I want to get back to Mount Vernon. I want to get back to my vineyard and my family and my grandkids. I do not want to move to Washington, D.C. for the rest of my life.
Our system was designed for ordinary people to run it, people with enough character to do the hard, unglamorous work, to share power, and then, like Washington, go home when their time is up. But what we have now, for all the reasons that I've talked about today, is a class of career politicians who don't want to serve, but to climb. Climb the follower charts, climb the cable news rankings, and climb their speaking fees and book deals. And the post-constitutional right is the predictable byproduct of that. Now, as many of you know, Ben Sasse announced his pancreatic cancer diagnosis a few months ago. And I have honestly never seen that kind of outpouring of love and support for one person from both sides of the political aisle. Ben, I know you'll probably never see this, but if you somehow do, that should tell you something. You were doing something right while in the Senate. And as a fellow Nebraskan, I just want to say thank you. I'm from Omaha, but I spent many summers of my life working in Northeast Nebraska, including Plainview. The people up there notice when someone takes the job seriously and tries to serve instead of perform. We appreciate what you've done in your career. We're praying for you and your family. Thank you for sticking around to the end. If you want more honest breakdowns on politics, culture, and faith, be sure to hit like and subscribe before you go. I'm trying to build something here that's calmer and more thoughtful than the rest of the political internet. You can check out what YouTube thinks you'll like by clicking on this suggested video right here, or maybe over here. And I'll link the full Ben Sasse interview in the description and in the pinned comment. It's definitely worth your time. Tell me in the comments what you agreed with, what you disagreed with, and whether you think that Sasse is right about the state of American politics. With that, I'll see you next time. Thank you.